Thank you, Audrey. And before I forget, I want to thank Missy for inviting me to speak this morning, as well as her committee, and Audrey for being such a good host. I got a lot of advice, but they're all down there. I'm up here. But it was good advice. I've led this meeting many times already. I think the one that I gave myself last week was the best. You should have been there. This one, I've just got to turn it over, let go and let God. I've only tried to plan a lead one time, and that didn't work out too good. And I've since learned that, if I ask God, as I always do, that if it be His will to allow me to be of maximum service to Him and to you, and I know that that's always His will, for us to love each other and to help each other. And so I've asked Him to help me this morning. I've been asked to share with you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like today. I'm not going to take you through every drunk and every throw up and every fall down and car crash and argument and fight. I'm not going to do all of that. But I'm going to try to paint for you in broad strokes how sick I was, because you don't get here unless you're sick. You don't stay unless you're sick. And when I got here, I was mentally, spiritually, and physically sick. Of course, I didn't know how sick I was. I had to stay here long enough to allow you to teach me how sick I was. I'm from Cleveland, and I'm, one of 10, raised by a single mother. And when I came into these rooms, I thought all of my problems, everything that I disliked, all the reasons for my discontentment and my irritability was due to the fact that I come from a single-parent home, and I didn't know who my father was. I had too many brothers and too many sisters. There wasn't enough money. There wasn't enough food. And black was not beautiful in those days. So when I got to you, there was a lot of anger. I didn't really start drinking until, after I left my mother. 17, I know she didn't ask me to leave, but, I've always been that super woman. I've always been, always trying to do it my way without any help, and of course you can't. No man is an island, but I tried to be. I moved, and that's when my drinking started. That's what everybody did in that area, it seemed like. They all drank. They bought it, I drank it. Looking back, because when you're in the midst of the mess, you can't see it. It's only when I come through and I look back that I see more clearly. I see now I was in trouble then. I drank to escape my surroundings, to escape me. And it got me into trouble. I didn't like drinking. I just didn't like it. It got me where I wanted to be. I never liked it. It was important for me to not be where I was, and it did that for me. I drank for about 17 years, and it just got progressively worse. There were, out of all of the bouts, there were 2 or 3 that I call my crises. I call those pivotal points when I hurt so bad that I'm forced to take some action. And what they've taught me is that I can think and I can think and I can think, but that thinking is not going to change my behavior. What's going to change my behavior is the action of doing. And so there were a few times when I hurt enough to want to do something different, where I reached out for help. Now, the first time was in the 70s, and I had come to at the bottom of my basement stairs. I don't know why I went down there, but I came to down there. I knew I was hurt. I knew I needed to get to a hospital, and I did that. And when I got to the hospital, I learned that I had broken 3 ribs, and I had cut my face up in a couple of places and needed stitches. And I used to work at that hospital where they took me. And I'll never forget the look on the people's eyes when they came to see me. They didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what had happened. I couldn't have told you how I came to be in that state. It was never my intention. I had always had these dreams and plans of, what I was going to accomplish and how I was going to accomplish it. In some kind of way, everything was derailed. And now I find myself drunk at the bottom of a flight of stairs, bruised and battered. And I didn't know how I had gotten that way. And I remember when I got home, I can't remember if I said, God help me. But I know today that you don't have to actually say the words because God would read your heart. And at that time, he knew that I could be reached. And I ended up calling our central office. And they sent somebody to take me to a meeting. Now, I told you black wasn't beautiful in those days. And I had had many instances of going to restaurants and not being served, or walking down the street and being called names and told to go back to a home that I never knew. So when this tall white man in the suit came to pick me up, that's what lets me know that this is a God-given program. Because there is no way in my right mind I'd have went with him. I didn't know who he was. And he came and said he was there to pick me up and take me to a meeting. I didn't know what kind of meeting he was talking about. I didn't know where it was. But I put on my coat and I went. I didn't hear much. I was very uncomfortable. I knew I wasn't going back, But the seed had been planted. And I believe that once the seed is planted, all it takes is a little bit of water for it to start growing. I'm sure it wasn't long before I started drinking again because that's all I knew how to do. At this time, in order to solve a problem, I've got to be drunk. In order to get anything done, I've got to be drinking. So I'm sure it wasn't long before my son asked for something that I didn't want to give him, and I got upset and I started drinking again. But that was important because it taught me about Alcoholics Anonymous, or at least let me know that there was, such an organization. It wasn't too long after that I learned I had cancer. And I think this was in the late 70s. And I really thought God was punishing me for not getting sober the first time it was offered. I was working at this time, and this boss that I had that should have fired me many, many years ago, but he would call me in his office every night and try to convince me to have the surgery that he said I needed to save my life. But at that time, I was so depressed, I couldn't make a decision. And if it had not been for him, I would not be standing here today. I know that. They found a renal cell carcinoma, and they removed a kidney to save my life. That surgeon that performed my kidney operation, he died of the exact same disease a couple of years later. I thought that it was time for me to do something about my life, to try to get things into order, make another plan. So after the surgery and I recovered, I decided to go to Hawaii. I had a nephew stationed over there. I didn't know that was, Hawaii, yeah, I was there. I don't remember much from that trip, though. Yeah. I made a plan. I'm good at making plans. Implementing them is the problem. But I had this plan, and I had made this promise that I was going to go visit my nephew. I was going to think about my life, and I was going to get it back on track. But I didn't know that the most normal thing for an alcoholic to do is to drink. I didn't know that I was the problem, and I was taking the problem to Hawaii. I didn't know those things. I learned those things later. Maybe the first couple of days I didn't drink. But as soon as I found that little commissary and the captain, I was off and running. And I look back at it now, and when I got there, my nephew was so glad to see me, him and his wife and his little daughter. It was such a little happy family unit. And then I showed up. Before I left them, they were arguing. She was fussing, get her out of here. Oh, it was terrible. And I really felt bad. I was humiliated and I was embarrassed. I couldn't leave because I had drank up all my airfare. I didn't have any way to get back home. So they had to take their little savings and send me back to Cleveland. And I remember coming through that airport. And I remember thinking to myself, there must be something wrong with you, Martina. Because I remembered very clearly telling myself that I wasn't going to drink while I was over there. And I had been unable to keep a simple promise that I had made to myself. Now, my doctors had been trying to subtly tell me that I had a drinking problem. They never outright said I was an alcoholic. They never really, offered treatment. But they would ask me questions. And, I was a very egotistical alcoholic, very arrogant. And I figured, you're the doctor. Why should I tell you I've got a problem? You should be telling me that I've got a problem. So I would never tell them the truth about how much I drank. And it's funny because after I got sober, I had a chance to look at my medical record. And they had diagnosed me as being a chronic alcoholic way years before I got here. And I was a little pissed at that, too. I really was upset. But this time I went to her and I said, maybe I've got a problem. She picked up the phone right away. And she called this place called Orca House in Cleveland. I made an appointment for me to go over there. When I went to her, I wanted some help, but she moved too fast. I was thinking about it, and I wanted her to talk to me about it and tell me about the place and tell me what I'm supposed to take and all of this and she didn't. She just picked up the phone. She made the arrangements and the next thing I know, I was scheduled to go. Well, I can't do it that way. So I went and bought me a half a gallon. And I went home and I sat and about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I got that phone-itis. And I started calling the treatment center. I got to find out what kind of people were there. What do they do? What kind of, what was the curriculum? And after I got there, and I found out who I had been speaking to, you would have known how sick I was. Couldn't understand a word he said. But he did manage to tell me that I would call and I would try to sound so proper and and that I was slurring all my words. He couldn't understand me. I'm thinking I can't understand him. He can't understand me. But I finally did get there. I finally did get to Orca House in January 26, 1981. That's my sobriety date. Now, like I said, those are broad strokes. Until before I got to Orca House, there were many days and nights of drinking, of crying, not understanding what was going on with me. I wasn't speaking to my mother. I wasn't speaking to my sisters. I was in conflict with everybody in my life because nothing was right for me. I like to drink and drive. That was my entertainment. Unfortunately, I'd take the kids with me. That was their entertainment. I'd get them all in the car, all the little boys in the neighborhood, and we'd go out. I remember tell you this one story, and then I'm going to move on. But me and the kids were out, and Starsky and Hutch had just came on the scene. I had taken them bowling. And when we came out, I backed out and I hit a car. Well, the owner just happened to be coming, and he hollered at me, and my son said, "Don't stop, take off." He couldn't have been no more than 10 at the time. And so I did. It was a great idea, wasn't it? Really? I did. And the guy got in his car and he started chasing us. And my son said, "Pull into that driveway." I did. He said, "Turn off the car and let's duck down." I did. I did. I can't believe I did that, but I did it. I did do that. They talk and laugh about that now. God help us. Tell you, when you're in the midst of it, you'll do anything. But I got to Orca House in 1981, and that's really when my life began. I was 34 years old at the time. I had drank for 17 years. I didn't believe I was an alcoholic. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. But I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I wanted something to change. I wanted something to be different. I wasn't raised in the church, but I went to church a lot. I believed in God. I knew He had my back. I knew God watched over me. There was no doubt in my mind about that. But believing in itself is not enough. There has to be some action. There's got to be a change in your character, a change in your behavior in order to get sober and stay sober. What I heard at Orca House began to change my life. I didn't understand a lot of what I heard, but I intuitively knew it was important. They should tell us that what you don't understand, put it on a shelf, and when you need it, you take it down. I heard such gems of wisdom in those rooms. I knew a lot of it applied to me. I just didn't know how, but I knew I needed to remember it. There was one guy, and I was the type of person too that I'm going to listen. I'll eavesdrop to the best of my ability, but I don't want you too close. I don't want you invading my space. And alcoholics have a tendency to hug, and to kiss and all of that stuff. And I wasn't having any of that at the time. I wanted to hear what you had to say, but, don't get too close to me. And I just thank God for all of the people that were there because they knew this, and they would just say, "Give her time. Just give her time." And they gave me all the time that I needed. But they dropped those pearls of wisdom that saved my life. And there was enough there that was specific for me. I remember this one old timer, he told me I was an egotist with an inferiority complex. Well, I didn't like him. I mean, I was, who does he think he is? But at the same time, they told us that when you hear something and it makes you squirm or it makes you nervous, then maybe that's something you better take a look at. And he made me squirm when he said that. I didn't really understand it, but somehow I knew it applied to me, and I better hold on to that. Somebody else told me that you can look at your life as either half empty or half full. And that if you was always looking at it as half empty, you was always striving or struggling to put something in it. And if you're always struggling to put something in it, you can never appreciate what's already in it. I knew that was important. I knew that was important for me. And I put that on my little shelf. They told me that when you're pointing a finger at somebody, somebody's always pointing the finger back at you. And that you need to look at you. And that was important. For the first 10 months, I went to meetings, and every time I left a meeting, I'd say, I'm not going back. I'm not going back there. I don't like those basements. I don't like those people. I'm not like them. I didn't do the things they did. I didn't go to places they went. My family still loves me. I got a job. I'm not like them. But I kept coming back. There was that attraction. On the other hand, you was telling me that you loved me. You was telling me that, you wanted me around. You was asking me to do things. You was making me feel a part of. I needed it. And I liked it. And it kept me coming back. I was trying to convince myself. I was trying to really understand. I really wasn't an alcoholic. I was just, here. I had some problems. I drank too much. But I really was not an alcoholic. 10 months I went through this. And finally, one day, I really heard. And this kind of taught me about the power of the mind. Sometimes the mind can be a terrible thing to have. If it ain't right, it can be a terrible thing to have. And I began to learn that I needed to control what was up here. I needed to first take a look at what was up there. I needed to know what was up there. And my mind was telling me I was all right. And I had to stop and think and look at all the people that was telling me that there was something wrong with me. My boss thought something was wrong with me. I remember the day they had an intervention on me. There was about 5 staff people sitting there and me. And they were gently trying to tell me that I had a drinking problem. And I was so indignant. How dare you? I drink at your house. You drink with me. If I've got a drinking problem, you've got a drinking problem. I just didn't want to see it. I couldn't have seen it at that time. My mind was closed. I didn't know that you can see and not see clearly. That you can hear and not really hear. I didn't know that at the time. You taught me this. And gradually, I began to learn. You had to teach me and let me know that I didn't know how to live sober. And that if I wanted to live a sober life, I had to get with sober people. I had to do what sober people did. After 10 months, I heard this lady lead and she said, don't compare. They had been telling me that from day one. Don't compare. But I heard her that time. And in hearing her, I had to ask myself, Martina, if you're not like them, if you didn't do what they did, then what did you do? What's going on in your life that you find yourself in a room full of alcoholics? Why does your mother think you belong here? Your boss think you belong here? Your sisters are glad that you're here. What's going on in your life that all these people think you got a problem? And that forced me to stop looking at you and start looking at me. I had to go home and look around my house. My house was drunk. I I was telling Lily about the dinette set that I decided would look better as end tables. You know? I took them apart. It seemed like a great idea at the time. My son begged me not to. He said, Mom, we're not going to have any place to eat. I said, I'll get another dinette set. You know I never did. My life was unmanageable. I began to see the unmanageability in my life. I was going to work when I could, you know, when I found something in the dirty clothes hamper that wasn't too dirty. Sneaking around in the building trying to pretend like I had been there since 8 o'clock. And I had just arrived at 10 o'clock. Lying about which son had gotten hurt and then forgetting which one got hurt. My life was unmanageable. And then I had to deal with the insanity. I just wasn't insane. You had to teach me that my behavior was insane. That when you continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting things to be different, that behavior is insane. 10, 11, 12 months, okay. All right, I'm an alcoholic. You know, people had taken me to meetings in town, out of town. I had been everywhere, met all kinds of people. And finally, why not me? If it can happen to so many people, how could it not happen to me? I knew I was special, but I couldn't convince myself I was that special. You know. So I said, okay, all right, I'm an alcoholic. What are we going to do about it? How do I fix this? You know, how do I get well? How do I recover? I had to get a sponsor. I didn't want a sponsor. I didn't like people telling me what to do. I figured I could just go to meetings and I'd pick it up. You know, I was an eavesdropper. You know, I'd find the couple that was really doing it or the person that I thought was really into it, and I'd eavesdrop. Where they said they was going, I'd show up. What they said you needed to do, I would do. Because now, all right, I'm an alcoholic, let's fix it. I was introduced to the steps. And I began to read our literature. And I remember reading how one of our co-founders had had this conversion that he likened into a clean wind that blew from a mountain. And he was changed. I think that was Bill W. I know that prayer changes a person, sometimes subtly and sometimes miraculously. And I think in his case, as he said, it was miraculous because this is the result. And the big book says that we are a group of people who, under normal circumstances, wouldn't mingle. So I knew that I had to change. How do you change? They told me first that I need to learn to love myself because I can't love you if I don't love myself. I thought everybody loved themselves. But they said, Martina, if you love yourself, then why are you killing yourself? And I didn't have an answer for that. They asked me, if you love yourself, why do you keep lying to yourself? Because if you're lying to yourself, you're saying that I'm not worth being honest with. And I had to take a look at that. Every time I told myself I was going to do something for me, and I didn't do it, I might as well have said that you're not worthy of that. That's not something that's going to build up my self-esteem. So I had to stop lying to myself. I remember I asked an old timer, and that's what he told me. I said, how do you get honest? He said, stop lying. You know, see, I told you I didn't talk to people, so when I got up the nerve to ask him, I expected something profound. He said, stop lying. I was at another meeting, and I heard an old timer say that every night he prayed for victory over self. And I thought, and I still think, that that's the most profound thing that I've heard in these rooms. I didn't know exactly all the ramifications at the time, but I have come to know and come to believe that self is the problem. And our text tells us that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our problem. How do I overcome self? I can't overcome self until I know self. My job here is to find out the truth of me. The sum of all my thoughts and actions is my truth. And are they in a line with how I want to live my life or how I want to be perceived? Or are they in a line with the type of person that I want to be? And of course they weren't. I know that I can't change me. My job is to become willing. And then ask God to change me. Recognize that our text says that there is a power, and that we need to find that power now, and that power is God. So I learned how to pray. When I first started on this journey, I would get up every morning and I would thank God for waking me up. I'd count my blessings, because they told me that you can't be depressed and grateful at the same time. They told me that if you count your blessings, you're not always looking for something else. And that was important for me, because I was always looking for something else. And when I learned to count my blessings, it allowed me to be satisfied with who I was and where I was at that moment. And realizing that a lot of people didn't wake up that morning. Or they woke up and they weren't able to talk or to walk or to laugh or to cry. And all those things that happened for me, and that I was grateful for that. And in learning how to be grateful, I realized that I was happier. And in being happier, it allowed me to not be so centered on myself, but to think of somebody else. They used to tell us all the time to do something for somebody and don't tell them. Well, I wouldn't go do that. If I was going to do something, I wanted you to know it. I wanted everybody to know it. But they said it didn't work that way. I had to learn how to want to do that. And how do I learn? By practice, by doing it. Trusting in the process. It was very difficult for me to trust in the process. But once I got a taste of it, I wanted more. Right away, my life got better in the sense that I'm going to work every day. I'm getting a full paycheck now. I got 2 weeks vacation. I didn't know how people got vacation. Especially paid vacation. You know? These things are happening. You know, I'm sleeping good at night. Those muscle spasms, the twitches had stopped. I'm laughing. I'm smiling. You know, life is good. So I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work that you've assigned me. I'm taking a look at myself. I'm standing in the mirror every morning and saying, Martina, you're okay. I'm learning to look beyond the outside package and realize that there's a God in me that's good. And my job is to see that good in me and see it in you as well. I remember I was on the bus one day. This lady walked down the street and I immediately started picking her apart. I said she ought to go back home and start all over again. Hair wasn't right, clothes wasn't right, you know. And a voice immediately said, well, who are you? And have you walked in her shoes? Do you know what a history is? Have you taken the time to try to understand? Can you offer a hand to help? And that taught me a valuable lesson. Why do I need to put you down in order for me to feel good? There's somewhere in the big book where I read that no matter what the issue is, there's something wrong with you. If I'm angry, if I'm upset, if I'm jealous, if I'm envious, I'm prideful, whatever it is, there's something wrong with me. Why is it what you say affects me in a negative way? I better look at what that means to me and fix me. I don't need to fix you, I need to fix me. And that's been the path I've been on since I've been sober. It's not, they say we trudge this road. I haven't been tiptoeing through the tulips, you know. This is hard work. This is a tall order. I'm a complex person. It's a simple program, but I'm a complex person. I've had to learn that, and I was talking to Audrey about this. The big issue's easy for me. You show me a mountain, I can go around that mountain. But if a pebble fall off, I'm going to fall. I'm going to get tripped up. It's them pebbles that trip me up. I'm going to handle the big stuff because I'm an egotistical alcoholic, and I'm going to show you I can handle it. It's the pebbles that trip me up. Watch my beginnings. I have to watch my beginnings. You know, if I found that if I do what's right, it doesn't take any thought. But if I want to do what's wrong, I got to go through the committee. I got to go through the committee. We got to discuss it. I got to talk to somebody else about it. I got to write about it. I got to pray about it. You know, because I want to cut a corner. I'm looking for an easier, softer way. I'm trying to justify and rationalize. But if I just do what's right, it takes no thought. It's over, and I can go on to the next thing. That's my prayer. Lord, help me to do what's right. Help me to do the next right thing. Help me to recognize the need in other people and respond according to your will. Can't respond to everything. But I need to respond when it's appropriate for me. My path may not be your path. But I think that we're all called to love one another. That we're all called to help one another when you can. You know, when I came into these rooms, I thought that if I had enough money, all my problems would be solved. And people say God has a sense of humor. You know, He didn't make me rich, but He gave me enough to make me think that I had some money. I remember I had my brother out, and that's another story in itself. Because this brother was in prison. And I was in one of my, you know, what I call my real spiritual mode. I'm praying daily. I'm reading my Bible, and I'm reading the literature, and I'm in a good space. And so one day I'm thinking about my brother, and I say, Lord, if you send him home, I'll do all I can to help him. I didn't really think He was going to do that. He did. I don't think it was the next week I got a call asking me if I would take my brother. You know, I took him in. But, you know, I wasn't at a place where I was ready to give of myself. I had an apartment building, so I put him in an apartment, and I furnished it, and I took him food. And he had been there for maybe a couple months or so. And I'm sitting at home, and I'm quiet, and thought comes to me, Martina, you took this man out of a cell, and you put him in a 5-room apartment, and you haven't been over there. He might be lonely. He might be a little afraid. And so that let me know that it wasn't enough for me to just take him out of prison and give him a place to stay. I had to become involved in his life. I had to give of myself. I had to learn how to do that. But we'd become best friends in the process. And one day, we were out, and he had asked me for, I don't know, $3 or $4. And I gave it to him. And I don't know how much I had in mine, in my pocket, but it was a lot more than 3 or 4. And a person came up to him and asked him for $1, and he gave him 2. Oh, can you imagine how that made me feel? Oh, jeez. I got a pocket full of money, and he came to me first, and I said no. And he went to my brother. My brother gave him 2 of the 3 I had given him. That taught me something. That taught me something, that when God gives you resources, they're not really for you. The only value they have is in taking care of your needs and meeting the needs of others. Now, I didn't turn and change overnight. I had to go through that process of, when the opportunity arose, meeting that opportunity. Sometimes I was successful, sometimes I wasn't. But the more I did it, the easier it got. And I realized that eventually I lost nothing. I lost nothing and may have helped somebody else. This program has truly changed my life, not only my life, but my family's life. You know, most of the people I come into contact now, their lives have changed. I remember early on, you know, people would call me on the job, and we'd close by saying we loved each other. And my coworker said, you know, you never tell me you love me. So I started telling her I loved her. And then I realized I had never told my mother that I loved her. And I remember going to her and telling her that I loved her. And then reaching out to my brothers and sisters and telling them that I loved them. Now, in the beginning, I didn't feel anything. But I noticed that it made them feel good. And if I said it long enough, it made me feel good too. Change. I have 2 sons. The younger one is in the rooms. He's got 3 or 4 years. But what's important about him is that in his struggle to get sober, I had to grow enough to let him go. It's a hard thing to let your own go when you know that there's a solution. But you taught me that Serenity Prayer means that I really need to have the courage to let go and let God. And I'll never forget that day he was on my porch, and I was on my way to work, and I wouldn't let him in. And I left, and I cried all the way to work. And I remember praying and asking God to help me to have the courage to let him go. See, I thought that by my saying no to him, he would stop loving me. And you told me if that's all it took, he ain't love me anyway. You told me to give him to God. And if it was God's will for him to get sober, that he would. And I'm grateful that it was God's will for him to get sober. You know, I'll never forget it wasn't that long ago. He came, I wasn't feeling too good, and he asked me if I needed anything, and I was in shock just from hearing those words. And I told him I just wanted some water, and he went and left the house to go get the water, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I jump up, I run out the door and said, "Don't you need some money?" He said, "No." Oh my God. This is a miracle. But, you've given me my second son back. I have 2 sons, and we're all good friends today. And that's a miracle, and it's a blessing. Today I just want to continue to grow. I recently retired. I've been on the job 40 years. I remember somebody said here during the conference that they were 19 years sober and still struggling with some things. Well, it happens at 31 years sober too. Some of you, I had mentioned this too. I got a new boss. And up until this time, I pretty much did what I wanted to do on that job. I was a good worker, and they gave me the run of the place. So now here comes a new director, and she got new rules. She wants things done a certain way, in a certain order, a certain time. I figured it didn't apply to me. I've been doing the job for 38 years. I didn't need direction. She wanted to direct me. We clashed. At first, I realized what I was doing, and when it would get bad, I'd go home and I'd pull out all my literature and all my books, and I'd bring them to the job. I'd sit them on the desk, and when she came, I'd reach for it, and I was able to be okay. Then a couple years, she wouldn't give me the time off to come to this meeting. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. I acted very badly. I dug my heels in, and I just refused to cooperate. I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. It was like I was in a sober blackout. When I came to, this woman was trying to fire me. HR called me, and I knew somebody over there. Said, Martina, do you know what's going on in your department? I said, no, what's going on? She said, you better come over and let's talk about this. And I did. I went over and I talked to HR, and she said, your boss is trying to get you fired. I was shocked. And I was shocked because I knew that it should not have come to that. I knew better. You had taught me better. I could do better. I know how to win friends. I could have handled the situation, but I dug in. And I just wasn't gonna give up. It was gonna be my way or no way. So, okay, I'm gonna retire. So I'm gonna put in my letter. But I know I can't leave things that way. I know I've got to clean up my side of the street. I know it wasn't about what she said or didn't say, or who was right or who was wrong. The important thing was that I've got to clean up my side of the street. No matter what's going on, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me, and I've got to fix me. I didn't want to apologize. I really didn't. So I started praying. I don't know what else to do. When I've done all I can do, I got to pray. I got to pray, and I got to be honest, and I've got to tell God what I've done. And that I need his help. Because I don't want to do what I know I need to do. I don't want to go and apologize. But I know I have to, and I need your help. You've got to help me go in there and sit down and be honest and not try to color it and not try to make excuses and just say, I've been a bad employee and I'm sorry. I could have done better and I should have done better. And I don't know how long it took me, but gradually I got to that point because I knew I couldn't leave until I did it. And I was able to go in there and sit with her and to tell her that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my behavior. I'm sorry for acting the way I did. I can do better. I should have done better. And it wasn't about her forgiving me or anything. It was about me cleaning up my side of the street. It's about me acting like the sober woman that you've trained me to be. I should have retired 5 years ago. I love it. I love it. But what that taught me was that you think you take care of the big things, and some of our issues have like little tributaries that you got to connect up together before you can deal with them. There was a rape in my past, and as a result of that rape, I lost my faith in people. I hated that feeling of being out of control, that helplessness. And I didn't realize, when I came into the program, they told me that if you have other issues, seek other help. And I did do that. I went to the Rape Crisis Center. I went through therapy, and I thought I had dealt with it. But I noticed that every time somebody got raped on television or I read about it in the newspaper, I just cried. It hurt. It hurt. Then I was at a meeting, I think I was about 15 years sober, and I heard a lady talk about something that had happened on her job and how she couldn't be free from the pain until she forgave the person that caused the pain. And I knew that that was something that I had to do. And I knew that I was incapable of doing that myself. True forgiveness, I'm incapable of doing. I can only forgive you through the grace of God. And I went and I sat and I talked to God. And I told him about the pain that I had been carrying and how I was willing to let it go. And if I needed to forgive, I was willing to forgive, but he would have to give me that forgiveness because I was incapable of forgiving the man myself. And when you ask in all sincerity, and if it's good for you, your prayers are answered. Immediately, I knew that that pain had left me. I haven't cried since. I was freed from that pain. But what I didn't know, that entire incident was the reason why I had to be in control of everything. Why I couldn't let you in. Why I had this wall of protection around me. I didn't know that the reasons why I hate people telling me what to do, because he told me what to do. See, I got rid of the big issue, but those tributaries, the little rivers, the fingers, they were still there. And it was only with this incident at my job that I examined my behavior, and I knew that something else had to be going on, and it made me stop, it made me pray, it made me look, it made me search for my truth and connect those dots. So now I have an understanding of why I do some of the things I do and the way I react to some of the things that happen in my life. And once I have that awareness, then I have the power to do something about it. By God's grace. I can't pray for him to help me change me until I know what the issue is. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But if we stay on the path, we trudge this road to happy destiny. We can become whole people. I'm looking forward to living my life, living my days without any unrest, without any walls, without any divisions, being able to go wherever, take me and be perfectly at ease, perfectly at home. And when I reach out and I see one of you, and maybe you're a little different from me, that I won't readily judge you, but I'll seek to understand. I'll seek to love you. I'll ask for help when I need it. I couldn't get this education anyplace else. I don't think there's any place where you can go broken and be put back together. Have a second chance at living your life better than you did the first time. To affect change, not only on your life, but all the people around you. I've heard so many times that this is a God-given program. And I know that to be true. I know that sometimes God takes the least of us to accomplish the most. And the people in this room, you ladies, we have that power. We have that capacity to change our lives, to change other lives, to be the very best that we can be. That's my prayer, that I will live my life in the purpose that God has for me, that I won't leave here and not know what his plan was for my life. And in order for that to happen, I've just got to say yes. I've got to say yes. I've got to be willing to step out on faith. I've got to be willing to be uncomfortable sometimes, knowing that things will work out for the best. It has. There's one other thing I'm going to tell you, because this was important to me, and I'm really going to close, for real. I know we got to go. But early in my recovery, I was given a big Bible, and I started recording events, prayers that I had prayed, and the answers that I had been given. And when things get really dark, I go back and I look and I can see. It's like seeing my own footprints, where God has look, Martina, I've done this for you. And if I did it then, I'll do it now. I remember, you know, sometimes when you're driving and you want to come out of a parking lot and there's 2 or 3 lanes of traffic and you can't see your lane. So I had come out, the cars had stopped. I had come out past 2 lanes, trying to get to the 3rd lane where I could turn. And as I eased out, I heard the screech of these tires. And at the same time, I heard wings. I knew that God was protecting me from that truck barreling down on me. It was just the most amazing incident. And then there was one other time when I was on my way to my meeting. I came to this corner, and I looked across the street, and there was a cross draped in purple. And I just started crying. I was sober enough to know that it wasn't me, but the God within me. I'm not a religious person, but God lives in us. And that spirit that lived in me recognized the significance of that cross. That spirit responded, not me. But I'm just grateful to have been present and was able to recognize what was happening. I feel blessed. I feel honored to have been asked to speak to you this morning. And my prayer is that we leave here rejuvenated, determined to do as much right as we can, to help as many people as we can, to love all that comes within our little sphere, and that you get back home and find everything as you left it. God bless you, and thank you. How'd I do?